It's showtime. All right, everybody. If it's Tuesday, you know that could mean only one thing and one thing only. And I used only twice in a sentence. And I don't know why, but I have to tell you, I'm really excited because we're getting a return guest. His experience was not so bad that he didn't want to join back again. We'll be talking about the craft and business of making novels about comic books. But to bring some credibility to this show, I'm bringing on my friend, Mike the Knife Fasolo, who is a Hollywood screenwriter. Right, Mike?
That's what I've been rumored to be.
Let's see. There you go. So, I'm a comic book writer. Mike, have you ever written any prose?
I have occasionally dabbled in the prose section.
What does dabbling look like when you do it?
That's it. Yeah, it's not pretty. It's not pretty.
I read a novel that you wrote.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Did you read the whole thing, or did you quit halfway through?
Quit halfway through, and I still want that time back.
As you should.
As I should. All right. Well, let's not make the audience wait any longer. All two of them. Neil Kleid, welcome to the show.
Hey.
Oh, come on.
Please. Thank you. Thanks for, y'all can sit down now. Thanks for having me back.
So, Neil, welcome back to the show. The last time we saw you, hey, Ari. Well, we just started the show. That's all we got so far.
What up?
Wanted to know what was going on. What up? So, Neil, welcome back to the show. We're here because you have even more exciting published work, and you're going to be telling us a little bit tonight about what it's like to write comics and what it is to write prose and that transition and how you did it. Are you ready to wow the audience?
Let's do it.
So, Neil, first thing first, I can only do sharing slides if I look way over here and then I go over here because I have my camera on a post. So it is, you got to look around it. But I can see you now. So, Neil, this is a new book that you're coming out with, isn't it?
Yes, it's a new book that's coming out a week from today. It's an original X-Men novel from Aconyte Books in partnership with Marvel, and it's called The Phoenix Chase. And it's under the banner of it's called School of X, The Phoenix Chase. Basically, Aconyte has a bunch of different Marvel lines. They've got one set in Asgard, they've got Heroine line, and this is School of X, which is set during the Brian Bendis era of the X-Men.
So a lot of dialogue.
It's a book, so yeah.
A lot of words too, bud.
A lot of work. Well, no, we had Bendis on the show, and Bendis is well known for giving lots of great dialogue, one of the best dialogue writers in the history of comics. So you could not have picked a better arc to work off of than the one from Brian Michael Bendis.
Well, the whole School of X line is set during that era. So there have been a couple novels before. We did this. If you see here, this slide on the right, School of X was an anthology that Aconyte put out about a year and a half ago that basically focused on the younger generation of the X-Men and did all these short stories that really highlighted not like Cyclops or Wolverine, but more like Shark Girl or Tempest. And I was invited to do a story about Quentin Quire, otherwise known as Kid Omega, who is kind of a very divisive character in the X-Men world. And I did this really fun story where he basically time travels with his best friend and goes through X-Men history. And they really liked it. We actually were nominated for a 2022 Scribe Award by the International Association of Media Tie-in Writers. Didn't win, but that's okay. We got nominated.
It's an honor to be nominated.
It was very much an honor. Thank you, International Association of Media Tie-in Writers. And people liked it well enough that I was basically brought in to do a full book based on Quentin Quire.
Wait, Neil, just pause for a second. The American Association of Media Tie-in Writers, is that
International Association of Media?
International, bud.
Say it again. The International
Association of Media Tie-in Writers.
Wow, that's a really narrow associate. Well, like how many of there? Like
Probably
9 people in it.
So tie-in writers can be. It's basically anything you've done that's licensed, right? So if you do a novel based on licensed characters, you're a media tie-in writer. So if you've written a Marvel book, a DC book, Halo, name a license, Worlds of Warcraft, then you are eligible. I may be off a little bit, and please don't yell at me, International Association of Media Tie-in Writers. But I believe that's how it is. You've written a licensed book based on franchise characters or characters that are licensed from someone else.
So are you dialing in right now, Neil, from an arcade? Is that what?
No, just my basement. This is my basement.
Yeah.
What's the one behind you?
Yeah, let's get a bigger shot of Neil's basement. Hold on, let me see if I remember how to.
Oh, Star Wars, nice.
Make Neil big. Hold on.
We've got X-Men, Star Wars, and Space Invaders over here.
Classic.
And it's pretty much the only place that's somewhat cool in my basement. Everything else is like I've got like girl books over here and I don't know, stuff over there. So I figured I'd like have some sort of an interesting backdrop.
So is that what you're doing with all the royalties from your books? Is buying arcade games?
Yes, that's it. All gets dumped into arcade games and my children, my kids. So
as it should.
Are they allowed to play the arcade games?
No, not at all.
So tell us a little bit more about the anthology, like this universe that you're writing for, and specifically a little teaser about the book to get people excited about what you've just created here.
Sure. So for those folks who aren't familiar with the very extensive X-Men continuity, at the time of this book, the X-Men are split. There is one faction being run by Wolverine, set at the classic mansion in Westchester, under his purview, and then there's Cyclops, who's kind of this like revolutionary who's teaching a bunch of kids out of the old Weapon X facility in Canada, up in Canada. And they're more militant. They're a little bit more like mutants for, mutant rights focused, less about like coexistence. And so that's what's happening at the time. The anthology, like I said, it's a lot of short stories about these younger characters who don't get a lot of spotlight. And Quentin is a character who showed up in the era that Grant Morrison was writing. It was the Grant Morrison New X-Men era. And he's this character who basically questioned Charles Xavier's dream of human and mutant coexistence. And he was really introduced as a very divisive, almost, they didn't want to really say villainous character, but like a rebel. He started a riot at the school and became this sort of evil, sort of nuisance-y character at the beginning. And he was actually the guy who was responsible for the split between the schools. And I got to do this really great story, which was very sort of tongue-in-cheek. It was first person. It was written from a first-person point of view of him basically he's in the head of a human, telling him this story about this time travel adventure that he had, because he can't tell anybody else. And so it was a really kind of cool framing device. And what I love about this character is that now in the current X-Men continuity, he's kind of a hero already. And so what I always like to explore is how did he get from being like this almost villain to being kind of redeemed. And so my stories really follow this this area where he's really kind of learning to value friendship and value teammates and value being part of a community. And that's kind of what the story is about. It's really about him learning how to be selfless instead of selfish. And so the book, the novel, The Phoenix Chase, kind of picks up after that short story, where he, the concept is that he starts a third school for mutants with a bunch of his friends, and those friends get kidnapped because of him by a bunch of mysterious aliens. And he and some of the X-Men have to go into space to find an aspect of the Phoenix Force, which is a very large cosmic entity in the X-Men universe, and ransom back that aspect for his friends. And it's about teachers and students. It's about fathers and sons. It's about him learning to be diplomatic while also being chaotic. It's a really fun space adventure. There's a lot of Marvel cameos in it. I had a lot of fun writing it, and that is the book. And it comes out next week from Aconyte.
So, Mike, if you were to take a guess, and I'm going to ask Neil to think about this, if you were to have to take a guess, how many comics do you think Neil had to reread in order to do the research for this? Because to me, it feels like a lot of work.
It feels like an exceptional amount of work.
But give me a guess, Mike. Like, how many issues?
I'm going to say
200. What do you think?
283.
283. You think he had to go back and read all of those books? Because he mentioned Bendis and also Morrison both had significant runs.
Maybe not read them all, but at least skim through them.
All right, Neil, how many comics would you say you had to reread in order to do this?
So I don't know about individual issues, but my library card was put to good use, basically. I went back and picked it, like it must have been at least 30 to 40 collections. Because really the book jumps. I mean, there's influences here that go back all the way to Dave Cockrum and Chris Claremont, to, like I said, to the Morrison era, to Bendis, and also to Ed Brubaker. It really jumps around all of X-Men history. There's influences, and I really just enjoyed it a lot. And it's not work to me. It's as Ari is saying here on the chat, it's one of the most fun parts, right? I get to go read comics. I get to go read Marvel comics and sort of pull out and cherry pick aliens and storylines and try to weave them together in a fun, original narrative.
So, Mike, given the choice between having to read 30 to 40 collected editions of X-Men continuity books or having a nail driven through the palm of your hand, which would you go for?
I would probably have to go with the comics, although it would be close. It'd take a lot of thought.
I would ask to see the nail first. How big is the nail?
Tell me exactly where it's going to go.
Neil, I applaud you. This sounds like a lot of actual work.
I mean, it is. Look, any writing you do is actual work, right? So, like, whether you're telling an X-Men novel or an original novel or original character novel or something of your own, whatever writing you do, you got to put in the time. Even like I'm working on a novel right now that's not based on any licensed characters. It's an original thing that I'm working on, and it's set in the 1950s. And so I have taken the time to look at maps and really kind of dig in and understand like the city that I'm writing it in. It was actually a lot of fun. It's set in Chicago in the 50s, and I got to actually get on the phone with FBI headquarters in Chicago to ask them some questions. Literally just like, hey, who was in charge back then?
What do you guys do?
And like it's fun to just say like, for work today, I called the FBI in Chicago.
Now they have your number.
They already had his number.
They had it.
They had it already.
I'm a Detroit Pistons fan, so like Chicago,
they knew.
Yeah,
Mike, I don't know about you, but this sounds like probably more work than either of us would want to do.
I would be very excited about it at first, and then after I got through probably the first volume, I would have been like, this is too much.
What was I thinking? So Neil, how many pages is the novel, and then how many pages is your manuscript when you have to put it together?
I mean, the book is like 350 pages, like the novel, typeset and printed. I don't even know. I haven't looked at the manuscript. It's 85,000 words. It's
85,000 words.
Yeah,
it's a lot of words.
And you did that all in one sitting?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fast typist.
Yep,
it's pretty impressive.
Big bowl of cereal, giant bottle of seltzer.
Now here's the thing. I want to do a quick transition because that's what I do. I do transitions, and you've also had quite a lot of experience writing, I obviously period pieces, but comics as well. Can you just talk with us about the different muscle that you use when you're authoring a comic versus authoring an 85,000 word? I can't get over 85,000 words, Mike. Just an 85,000 word novel. Talk to us about those different muscles you
So
use.
it's interesting because if you look at like, I'm looking at the graphic that you have here on the screen in Brownsville, which is the second project from the left, which is really my first graphic novel. It's the story of Murder Incorporated, the Jewish mob in the 1930s, and that book was about 200 pages, 209 pages, all in. And if I go back and really looked at the manuscript, I bet the actual script is over 85,000 words, just panel descriptions and dialogue and what have you. So like number of words has never really kind of daunted me. It's just the format, right? So like when you think about writing a comic book, you're working in close partnership with a co-author, right? Somebody who's going to, unless you're drawing it yourself, right? Like an artist who's going to bring your words to life. So there's a different way that you're really telling the story. You're working almost kind of like a movie script, right? Like panel one, here's what the camera sees, and here's what you see the outside of a store, and these guys walk by, and because it's also not a movie and it's more static, each person can only have one action. So you have to know like kind of like the rules for comics. You can't just take a screenplay and really adapt it. It's a very specific muscle. It's a very specific thing to do. With a novel, you don't have your wonderful partner collaborator who you can kind of like rely to cover up your stupid mistakes, right? Like I have a wonderful artist that I'm working with now who did this book here on the left, Savor, John Broglia, which he did this YA adventure comic that we did about food and fighting on an island in the Pacific. And now we're working on this new comic, a very intimate Jewish crime story book. And I can always rely on John to cover up my mistakes and with his art, make my words look really good. I don't have that safety net when it comes to a novel, right? I have to tell the story in a way that makes the reader imagine the pretty pictures that John would normally put on the page, right? So for X-Men, for example, if I'm writing an X-Men novel, I don't have a wonderful artist like Dave Cockrum or Frank Whiteley or anyone who's kind of drawn X-Men, John Byrne, over the last 5,000 years, kind of doing the heavy lifting for me. I actually have to convey all that action and that adventure and the bombast and the color that you would normally get with a wonderful, Marvel X-Men comic.
So Neil, if you blow it, it's all you, right?
Oh, it's all me.
It's all
me.
You. That's
but
a lot of pressure.
I'm used to that because I've blown it before and I will now. Like it happens.
Neil, if you've blown it, you wouldn't keep getting book deals. I'm sorry. I don't buy that you blew it.
But I just wanted to finish the one point that I wanted to say is the great thing about adapting like a novel from like an X-Men comic, something like an existing universe, right? Like a licensed character, like Quentin Quire and the history that he comes with, is that you have all those amazing artists who have really set the stage for you. So I feel like I'm sort of just translating like what they've put down on page and saying like, all right, here's what the costume looks like. Here's what this locale looks like. So it's kind of a little bit like a cheat. I don't have to make up a lot because I can just kind of look at the page and say, okay, that's what it should look like. How do I paint that picture using words?
I would find this to be a massive challenge to be able to, yeah, right, Mike? I mean, just being able to look, what are your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, do you have like a full outline before you start? I mean, I know you have the overall story, but do you have like a detailed outline, or do you just sit down and go, chapter 1 is about this, and then just jump right in?
Yeah, so I do work from a full outline. Like I've got an amazing editor, Gwendolyn Nix, who she and I basically put the pitch idea together, and the pitch was just a very quick like, it's this dude with this dude going into space and fighting these dudes. Like, I mean, I'm sort of like,
yeah, I would have bought that.
Right? Yeah, anybody would buy that. And so from there, she and I really developed the full outline, and the outline is what we brought to Marvel. We basically said to them, here's the short idea, and then here's the story, here's the beats, right? Here's Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, here's the characters, here's kind of the reveals and everything. And we really worked a lot on that. We spent, about 2 months just kind of hammering that into shape. It went to Marvel. Marvel came back with changes. We made those changes because they're Marvel. And that was it. And so then I had this wonderful, really detailed outline to basically follow as I was writing the prose. The one thing that is not in that outline is the dialogue, right? So getting to riff on the dialogue and sort of the interplay between the characters, that's where I like to shine. I like to really kind of work a lot with dialogue. If you read some of my comics, like it's a little more snappier than introspective. And so like being able to kind of let my elbows kind of loose there and not really follow very tight, like a very tightly detailed beat by beat, bullet by bullet outline in that case, lets me kind of get that improvisation that I normally wouldn't get.
So, when you think about, the prose novel, talk to us about comic creators, using me, for example, because it always comes back to me, right, Mike?
It's always all about you.
Right. Let's say a prototypical genius writer, we'll just call him Buddy Scalera, thought, hey, I'd really like to write a prose novel. What should a comic book creator who wants to walk in your shoes know about writing prose if they've already written comics?
Well, first of all, you don't have art to depend on. One of the key things that I always tell anybody who wants to do prose is read a lot of prose.
Yeah.
Like, right, really kind of pick up prose novels, especially in sort of the genre that you're playing, right? If you want to write a crime novel, read a lot of crime novels, read Dennis Lehane, read Don Winslow, right? Go out and really kind of look at the masters and see how they do it. If you're going to write a middle grade book, go read middle grade books. Get a feel for the characters, for the type of writing, right? You wouldn't write a middle grade coming of age adventure story the way that you would write a hard boiled crime detective story. It's two different types of writing. So for me, it's about, when you talk about research, it's not just researching the context of your novel and like the places and the characters and in the era. It's about researching how the medium, researching the medium. So for me, read a lot. That's kind of the first thing that I would say. And then also remember, it's not comics, right? Comics, you're defined. You've got a lot of restrictions in comics. I feel like there's a lot of restrictions in terms of it's got to be X number of pages. It's got to have a beat, a turn on the right side of every page, or it should. You've got limited number of panels, and within those panels, limited number of dialogue. So you get to kind of, like I said, take your elbows and kind of push the space out a little bit with a prose novel.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first prose novels that I wrote was for Marvel. It was an adaptation of a very classic Spider-Man storyline called Spider-Man: Kraven's Last Hunt, which is one of the seminal Spider-Man stories out there, created by James DeMatteis and Mike Zeck, two geniuses, and I was honored to be able to adapt that story. And when they created the story, it was 6 issues, right? 6 issues, 22 pages an issue. Those were the restrictions, and there was only certain things they could do because of the limitations of the medium. And so, even though it's a very psychologically driven story, for those who don't know, it's one of the most psychologically driven Spider-Man stories ever written. They still only had a limited amount of spaces to get into the heads of the character. With a prose novel, you can really expand on that and flesh it out. And there was a part of me that was like, how am I going to write an entire novel based on these 6 issues? I really need to think of how I was going to sort of do that. And that's the challenge, right? The challenge is, how do you fill 300-400 pages of prose with not only the actual story, but the sort of the meat of the character, getting into the motivations and getting into the character arcs, and making sure that you're not coming up short. At the end.
It sounds hard. I'm telling Mike, what do you think? It just sounds really hard.
It's daunting.
It is daunting. Neil, I take my hat off to you. I've got to go get a hat, but then I'm going to take it off to you. It does sound like a lot of work. Glenn had a comment here. He noted, Mike, you want to read Glenn's comment?
I always felt that novelists or prose writers were like Anthony Hopkins, and script writers like me were like Bruce Campbell. Yeah.
Hmm.
I,
And then Glenn's follow-up was,
You have to be able to write a sentence worth reading for about 250 pages. Very
oh,
true.
see, I like that should be on a T-shirt for at like a novelist convention, right? Like at a
except
writer's.
except you're 100 pages short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
350 pages.
So, Neil, where can they get this book, and how can they find more about you and the work that you're putting out right now?
Sure. So the Phoenix Chase, School of X, the Phoenix Chase, comes out from Aconyte Books next week, Tuesday, May 16th,
Woo-hoo!
in U.S. bookstores. You can pre-order it now anywhere books are sold. No, that's Wakanda. That's
That's
Wakanda.
Wakanda. That's different. That's different.
Sorry.
Excellent.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so it's anywhere books are sold, and
Where are books sold anymore? I don't even know.
online books.
Amazon.
If I were you, I would try to find an indie bookstore near you and support indie bookstores. I have a bookshop link. You go to bookshop.org and you search for me. I've got an instance of the Phoenix Chase up there that you could purchase a copy, and then the money that you spend it on, some of that money goes to support independent bookstores.
And they can follow you on the Twitters. Here's your Twitter address. I'm going to put it up because everything links off of your Twitters, right?
Yeah, so it's Neil Kleid at Twitter. It's Neil Kleid at Instagram. I'm on Spoutable now, also at Neil Kleid. Anywhere you can find me as Neil Kleid. I'm around.
That's really great, and I think people should go check this out. And Neil, you'll be coming back again for future episodes, right? Because I know that you're a very prolific creator.
So I hope so. Thank you. That would be lovely to come back and.
Now, Neil, we asked you this question the last time you were here, but I want to ask it again because sometimes the answers change. What is one piece of advice that you wish you had received earlier in your career?
That is a good question. What piece of advice would I have earlier in career? I mean, I think the fact that it's hard work is a big thing. I think a lot of times folks are in love with the idea of being a writer and don't realize that it's more than just being in love of. It's not just wanting to write; it's having written, and it's really kind of sitting down and doing the work. And there are days, nights, because I write nights and weekends. I have a day job. So nights and weekends, I come home and I'm exhausted and I just don't want to do the work. And whether I have a deadline or whether I don't have a deadline, having to kind of sit down and say, all right, here's what I have to hit 100 words a night, or I want to hit 2 pages of script. I just have to move it forward, right? Because it's about just kind of getting the work done. Otherwise, it'll never get done. But what I've learned also recently, which is something that I wish people had told me, is it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? If you don't do that, it's great if you could hit that deadline, if you could sit down and do the writing. But if you don't beat yourself up, right? Mental health is kind of the most important thing as a writer, to understand that, if I didn't do it tonight, I'll do it tomorrow night. Just, try to make. People get burned out. People get tired. Sometimes, I actually took 2 months off of writing recently. I was so tired because of my job, and I had just finished a massive deadline, a writing deadline. Well, it was the Phoenix Chase, and I had done a ton of work, and I had all this other stuff that I wanted to do that didn't have a deadline, right? That I just want to kind of keep working on. The novel I mentioned earlier, set in Chicago, and some other stuff. And I basically just said to myself, you know what? I'm just going to kind of take it easy. I'm going to watch television. I'm going to be with my family. I'm going to not beat myself up for the fact that I'm not sitting down every night and doing the work. And I think that's important for writers to hear, especially younger writers. There's no one, I know a lot of people are like, and I just saw somebody on social media say this, oh, by the time I'm this age, I have to have something done by Marvel. By the time I'm this age, I have to have sold a movie. I think that's ridiculous. It's nice to give yourself goals, but don't set a goal for yourself that you are then possibly setting yourself up for some sort of depression or mental pain if it doesn't happen, right? you know, just kind of keep doing it. You know, talent rises, and good work is good work. And if you don't get it done today, you'll get it done tomorrow, and it'll get done.
Mike, what do you think of taking off for 2 months and watching TV? I see you smile there.
Yeah, I think I tried to take off some time. It's been about 10 years now, so that I've just been sitting on the couch watching TV. So I'm thinking about coming out of it, but it's nice and comfortable and it's easy. So
Mike, you're a Hollywood screenwriter, so right now there's a forced break out there, isn't there?
yeah.
Something of a forced break. But you know what, Neil, Mike actually has what we have found to be the scientifically most anticipated part of the entire show. And people should not tune out because we have a big announcement right after trivia time.
Wow.
The trivia time is the favorite part of the show. Mike, why don't you lead us into some trivia? And Neil, we're going to ask you to jump in because these are prompts for creators. Mike, take it away.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing this properly, but I think it's called the Phaistos disc. It was found in, I think, around 1908. It's from about 2000 BC in the Minoan Bronze Age, as they say. And it's a disc that nobody has been able to translate. They have no idea what it says. They think it says something important, but of course they have no clue. And I just thought this was really interesting because since they don't know what it says or what it is, you could do anything. So if you wanted to make I thought of a good comedy story, like you could do it like a space pirate. He's hired to find this disc and they think it's something super, super important. And he goes through all the fun adventures and craziness. It turns out it's like some kid's, arcade token that he needed to buy the stuffed toy that he wanted. Just something silly. It doesn't have to be something serious. It could be just something funny, goofy.
I like that. I was going to go for humor as well, Mike. It would be like archaeologists researching, and it was like somebody just scribbling during class, and then they forgot it, and now it's in a museum mounted as this massive artifact. And it was by the student that was like the least likely to succeed. It was the one student that everybody was like, this guy. What do you think?
I kind of think wouldn't it be great if it was just like some ancient billboard, right? Some for some ad eat it
Taco
Joe's.
Bell.
Yeah, eat it Joe's.
Eat it Joe's. Smoke at Phaistos.
Yeah.
You like your smoke indoors. Neil, what else could you do with this? Could this be a horror rune or you're doing sci-fi? What do you think?
Yeah, you could do something like use it as somebody translates it to unlock some ancient evil or something like that. That would be kind of fun.
Could open the portal to hell. That's always a big one.
Yeah, and then it shatters or gets lost or something like that. And you have to go on some sort of hunt to get it back together to shut it down or something like that.
It's kind of like a MacGuffin, right? It doesn't really matter what it is. It just is the trajectory for the action.
Or Nicolas Cage could steal it, and
it could be the actual dance moves to something like the Macarena. It's just translated right out there for you.
Going back to Nicolas Cage, there would be nothing more awesome if Nicolas Cage got picked up for shoplifting. I just think that would be great. So Ari says, Neil, you're going to have to help us on this. What is this?
I have no idea.
A canticle for Leibowitz?
Never heard of it.
No? All right. I thought maybe it was something that was important. And I knew that Mike and I wouldn't know what it was.
Because I'm Jewish?
Yeah. I was like, maybe he'll know.
I don't know all the Jewish
stories,
unfortunately.
Did you read the whole Megillah?
I have read the whole Megillah. But I unfortunately, though I'm a very big believer in Jewish representation in literature and media, I don't have time to read it all.
You're reading
or watch it all. If it's a movie, I didn't watch it either. So
it's not just reading; it's watching.
I've seen Yentl. I'm good.
You're good. You
just took 2 months off. You should have watched it.
You should have watched it. Well, Mike watches Goodfellas family home videos.
Yeah, that's just it's like a family thing.
I watched The Fabelmans. Does that work?
So I did tease, Mike, that we would have a very special announcement, and next week we'll be joined by Patton Oswalt and Jordan Bloom
Woo.
Mike, where are they known from? Those names sound oddly familiar.
I think Patton he's like some sort of comedian, maybe
Famous.
or an actor, something or other. I don't know.
Neil tapped into his inner pop culture. Neil, what are Patton and Jordan famous for? And apparently you know Jordan personally.
Not personally, we're internet pals, but Patton and Jordan worked together on MODOK, the short-lived television series on Hulu, which was incredibly funny, and I really enjoyed a lot. And so Jordan, I believe, was a showrunner or screenwriter. He's producer of the show, and Patton was MODOK.
Well, there you go. So next week we'll have them on. They will be on the show. They'll be joining us, and of course, everybody should like and comment and do all the things that are supposed to be done. Hold on, I'm just gonna. Hello. No, that's not good music. I wanted to play out music for. Hold on, play out music.
That's not good play out music.
Neil, thank you so much for joining us. We are completely grateful for. Oh, it's a sci-fi classic about a far future society where literacy is lost. Did you know that, Mike?
No, but now I'm going to put it on my list. The Canticle of Leibowitz.
The Leibowitz, and what was this? Much if their work is translated as ancient artifacts. Yeah, they played that a little bit with Battlestar Galactica too, right?
I never watched the whole thing. So. I don't know.
One of my favorite shows. So listen, everybody, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Run out, don't walk, run, and go get Neil's book. Neil is awesome. It is a great book. I haven't read it yet, but I'm willing to say it's my favorite book of the week.
It's the best book ever. It's better than Canticle for Leibowitz.
Exactly.
For the win.
Better than the Phaistos disc.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for everything. Neil, I'm going to put you in the green room. You're welcome to eat all the licorice you want. Stay there. Don't go away. That was fun, right, Mike?
Yeah, that was great. I'm always impressed by people who can actually sit down and write a novel.
I would read Neil's novel. Neil, hold on. I'm going to bring it back. Neil, I would read your novel if you gave me, like, the Reader's Digest version. Like, could you get like a short, like 350 pages seems like a lot of reading.
There's some guys in space and they do stuff.
Well, what if I got Marvel to do it as 22 issues? 22 pages of 6 issues each. Would that be more palatable as a comic? No.
I'm looking for like a pamphlet.
No. So like a mini comic.
You want a flip card?
A mini comic.
Something I could read in the restroom. So I don't know, Mike. This kind of stuff feels like a real lot of work.
It does. It does sound daunting, but I would like to read it just to see how it was done and put together, and then coming back and talk to him and be like, okay, tell us what you did.
That sounds great. And Ari's literally texting me on the other line. Hold on. Babylon 5 ripped it off.
Oh, Babylon 5. That was a good show.
Yeah, it was a good show. Mike, so next week we'll have a very special guest, and not that they're all not special, but we're gonna have they're famous people.
Yeah.
Neil, are you famous, me? Neil?
You'd have to ask my kids, and they'll say no.
All right. We need famous people, but we were grateful for Neil for joining us. We're grateful for you guys every week for joining us. We will see you next time. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next Tuesday.